Nashville? Aw, man! Thought we were in Smashville.
Post-fight blowups have made the news in MMA, for some reason. Yet long before UFC 229, there were a number of times where a fighter's emotions spilled outside the cage, and in today's video, we'll take a look at some of the most infamous examples. Welcome to the INC, and these are 5 of MMA's post-fight brawls. Prior to UFC 229, the most infamous MMA brawl took place at Strikeforce Nashville in 2010. A largely forgettable show was ignited in the main event, as Jake Shields dominated Dan Henderson to claim an upset win over the Pride legend. Shortly after the fight, Jason Mayhem Miller stormed the cage demanding a shot at the champion, upsetting Shields' corner in the process. And with that corner being Gilbert Melendez and the Diaz brothers, what happened next was inevitable.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA. A lot of testosterone in the cage. Gentlemen, we're on national television.
Surprisingly, the Tennessee Athletic Commission went easy on the fighters, each receiving an $8,000 fine and 3-month suspension, despite Miller being punched and kicked by many of Shields' team members. The brawl also had a long-standing effect on the face of the sport, with the Diaz brothers earning a difficult reputation that remained for the rest of their careers, while broadcaster CBS used the fallout to cut their ties with Strikeforce. The promotion was bought by the UFC 1 year later. Glendale's Edmond Tarverdian is one of MMA's most despised figures, and his antics back in 2016 only lowered his stock further. At UFC 203, Glendale fighter Travis Brown took on Fabricio Verdum in a rematch of their epic bout from 2014. Verdum dominated the fight from the start, nearly finishing the fight in the first round and stopping the 6'7" giant from utilizing his striking, despite Edmond's best effort to coax his fighter into action.
Travis, first with the jab, double jab, chest jab, and then you can do whatever you want.
Verdum controlled the final round to claim a unanimous decision, where Edmond, frustrated at Travis for not finishing his opponent, tried to do the job for him. Neither team was fined following the incident, and it marked another chapter of one of the weirdest pay-per-views of all time. And considering this card had CM Punk, that's saying something. Brown was quietly released by the UFC after losing his next 2 fights, while Edmond hasn't won an MMA fight in 2 years. Conor McGregor is no stranger to frayed tempers. In 2017, McGregor watched teammate Charlie Ward take on John Redmond at Bellator 187. A match fought primarily in the clinch was wakened late on, as Ward caught Redmond with a vicious left hook to finish the match with seconds left in the first. After the fight, McGregor jumped in the cage to celebrate with his teammate, and when referee Mark Goddard attempted to separate the two, the Notorious One took matters into his own hands.
Wow, Conor McGregor trying to go at the referee. I don't know what's going on here. Who's the bodyguard now?
After being led out of the cage, McGregor slapped a commissioner who attempted to stop the Irishman returning to the ring, forcing the UFC to axe a planned comeback fight at UFC 219. McGregor would learn his lesson and no longer instigate post-fight brawls. He does it before the fight these days.
What the fuck, you fucking pussies?
It's no secret Pride had its share of post-fight shenanigans. At Pride 31, Mauricio Shogun Hua took on former UFC champion Mark Coleman. Shogun was the 2005 Grand Prix champion and held wins over Quinton Rampage Jackson and Alistair Overeem, and with an 11-year advantage, was expected to make easy work of the Hammer. Coleman looked to take Shogun down immediately, trying to utilize his fabled ground and pound, before Shogun responded with a leg lock which threatened an early stoppage. Attempting to reverse the hold, Coleman shot for an ankle pick that dislocated Shogun's elbow, forcing the ref to stop the fight and Shogun's team to enter the cage. It was there that mayhem ensued. Unknown to TV viewers, a full-scale brawl ensued between Shogun's shootbox team and Coleman's Hammer House, with Phil Baroni, Vanderlei Silva, and even Coleman's dad getting involved in the conflict, and with Coleman fanning the flames further in his post-fight interview.
Silva, you got one coming. Little ass ninja. You better keep your ass down at 185, buddy. Cheap motherfucker. Watch my language, my mom's watching.
Coleman and Shogun would rematch at UFC 93, with Shogun claiming revenge by TKO in the 3rd round. The deadliest post-fight brawl took place at the Royal Pines Ballroom in Gold Coast, Australia. After a match at Explosion 13, a riot broke out between the Hells Angels biker gang and rival group the Finks, after the defection of former member Christopher Hudson, who was in attendance for the show. What started with fists and kicks would turn deadly, as gang members brandished knives before Hudson was shot 3 times by Finks member Shane Bowden. 2 other bikers suffered gunshot wounds, while 3 bystanders were stabbed in the melee. The Ballroom Blitz became one of the most infamous gang wars in Australian history, with Bowden sentenced to 6 years in prison for attempted murder. The brawl would also have long-standing effect on Australian MMA, with Perth becoming the final state to legalize the sport in 2017, playing host to its first UFC event 1 year later. And now time for a few dishonorable mentions. Tito Ortiz's behavior after his win over Guy Metzger sparked an 8-year feud between himself and Ken Shamrock. The Diaz brothers struck again after attacking KJ Noons following his match at Elite XC. Robbie Lawler was confronted by a protester following his match with Nico Vitali, his opponent's sister. This is the INC, and thank you for watching.